Can you tell us a little bit about your retreat? Why you went into retreat? How's it going? And when are you coming out? All these questions.
How's it going? Fabulously, darling. It's going fabulously. So I can go back a little bit in time, back to 1970, 71, where I've been studying in India, in Germany, the University of Göttingen, studying Tibetan language, studying written and spoken, with the one idea, the only idea I had was I really need to learn Tibetan because I want to go up to Nepal and find some yogi up in a cave and just come under his wing and spend the indefinite future in retreat. That's what I wanted. It was very clear. It was very romantic, in a way, but that's what I really wanted. It's just, I had no idea of becoming a scholar, translator, teacher, just wanted to immerse myself in the practice because I had been introduced to Dzogchen just a year earlier by reading Evans Wentz's edited volume, Tibetan Book of Great Liberation, and it really touched a very deep chord in me. So that's what I really wanted, was just to become a yogi. But then I won't go into all the detail or wind up telling my whole life story, but His Holiness intervened. When I was heading to Nepal, then a bulletin was sent out of Dharamsala saying the Library of Tibetan Works and Archives was about to be established and long-term classes for Westerners would be taught under the auspices of the Dalai Lama. And when we received that bulletin, I was studying in the Tibet Institute in Switzerland at the time, the Sakya Lama, under whom I was training, Sherab Gyaltsen, I asked him, well, I really had my heart set on going to Nepal and finding a cave and just becoming a yogi. And this sounds like a classroom situation, going to a library. And what's your advice? And he kind of said, more or less, don't be a knucklehead. This is under His Holiness. Go to Dharamsala. Don't think twice about it. So I did, and the rest is history. But time and time again, I've escaped from the active way of life. First time when I left Tape Chuling in Switzerland in 1979, I just went off to India wanting to spend the rest of my life in retreat. Well, it didn't quite turn out that way. I was called back into active duty. And then again, when I graduated from Amherst, I went into retreat, but then was called out. I was asked to translate for the Mind and Life meetings with His Holiness. And then when I got halfway through my studies at Stanford, I just couldn't take academia anymore. My head was held underwater. So I just finished my comprehensive examinations, and then went off again for 6 months into the High Sierras, into retreat. But I had to finish some unfinished work, namely called a dissertation. And then I taught at UCSB, and as soon as the endowed chair was filled by a very competent scholar, Jose Cabezan, then I went off to retreat again. But for the first 2 decades of this century, I just kept on getting invitations all over the place and wound up teaching all over the world. And that prevented me from I took out one 6-month period in 20 years that I just went into solitary retreat, but I kept on being called out again and again. But then what was a tragedy for many people, and it turned out to be a blessing for me, was COVID. And suddenly international travel shut down. So then I only taught from my home. And then it got around to end of 2022. And I mentioned to Vesta, my wife, I don't really have any big responsibilities now. I'm not getting invitations. We're right in the middle of COVID, and I don't have any teaching position. There's nothing to prevent me now from doing what I wanted to do for the last 20 years, and then just let it go into an open-ended retreat with no big obligations on the other side. And she gave me her full support. And then she said, don't come back until you've gained realization. Those are the sweetest words I've ever heard from her. And so I've been up here since the beginning of the very end of 2021, was it? No, 2022. Because then I meditated all through 2023 and then through this, with no end in sight. And now I even have the spiritual director's cottage here in our hermitage, and I couldn't ask for a better place because I've been in some really pretty gnarly places for retreat, like up in the mountains above Dharamsala. That was tough going. So no end in sight, but I have a very clear vision of why I'm in retreat and why I feel this is a greater benefit, not only for me, but indirectly for everybody else, if I simply continue on this path with very, very few outside obligations. As I said, Siddhartha did most of the work of editing, and I would just come in, chiming in once in a while. Um, but the whole theme of reaching the path, this reaching the Bodhisattva path, the Mahayana path of accumulation, this was brought to my attention about 50 years ago by Geshe Ngawang Taige, the Lama was teaching, the principal teacher for Westerners in the Library of Tibetan Works and Archives. And he told me way back about 50 years ago, he said, Champa Kelsang, I think I was ordained at the time, and he said, Champa Kelsang, you know, there's nothing more meaningful to do in this lifetime than to reach the Mahayana path, the irreversible path. And so you'll be bodhisattva from now until you achieve enlightenment and never be off the path. And if you don't achieve that in this lifetime, I have to ask you, what was a higher priority than this? You know? So that was kind of drummed into me 50 years ago. And I've gotten repercussions of that from His Holiness, from Gyatso Rinpoche, from Drupal Lama Karma, under whom I've been training for the last 2 or 3 years. And so that's it. Really continue on this path, the shamatha, vipassana, textured cultivation of bodhicitta, and get to the point where it's irreversible. That's very simple. That become a bodhisattva, become a true, how do you say, walker along the path, walking the walk,
Yes.
along the path to Dzogchen, such that you'll never fall off. And so that's my aspiration. And I'm still in retreat. So I'm in progress.
Beautiful, beautiful.